Hello and welcome to African Dogs Leadership Project. I'm your host, Obehi Ewanfo. Do you want to know about good leadership quality you can apply in your business and personal life? Then make sure you subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends who might need it. Now let's get started with today's episode. In today's podcast, we are going to be looking at the importance of telling African story, even by the Africans themselves. The person I'm going to be talking to in this episode is Mike Aghughu. Mike has been present in this podcast before, so I'm going to go right away to ask him the first question. Thank you very much for your time today, Mike. My first question for you is this. What really is the importance of learning about African history, even by the Africans themselves?
Significance of having to know your history, and also it is also one of the medium via which that every single Africans and even the non-African will be able to actually embrace their own culture and see the value in it and appreciate it to the fullest, and also to the same degree that they appreciate foreign cultures that was given to them. And because your history, your knowledge of your history is the foundation and the premise for your self-pride. Your pride as an individual is premised upon what have happened in your past, what your ancestors have done. It is a way of saying that I am important. I am someone of great importance based on my history and based on the contributions of my ancestors and what they have done to the contributed. You understand? And that is the reason there has been so much attack on that history, saying group of people who are, of course, ethnocentric, trying to write off and said, the Africa haven't got history. Because if they succeed in making you to buy that very narrative, then you will have no foundation for your self-pride. And of course, if you don't have self-pride, your creativity and your productivity as a human being will be retarded. And you will only be left to depend and rely on the ingenuity and the creativity of other people who have realized their own culture, who have realized their own history, and also have built a lot of self-pride as a result of that self-knowledge of history. And that is why I think it is very, very important that every single African child, personally speaking, when I have a child, the history of Africa will be like a Bible for the child. It's the first book. Is the first thing, is the first knowledge, the first. It will come first before any known themselves. They have to why they look the way they do, and why they look the way they do, and the importance and the value of how they look, which so many, there have been so much stereotype which have been attached to that their physiognomy and their features and the tone of their skin, which is completely erroneous. Because if you won't begin to analyze the importance and the value of their look and the skin tone, you begin to realize that all the narrative that have been led to diminish the image of Africa and Black people in general is completely false and erroneous.
You see, now, I like what you were saying, that by learning about your history, you sort of get a high sense of pride in yourself as a person. In fact, that is the reason that it is taught. That is the reason that in many important states in the world, their history is the number one that they try to sow into their generation, into their people, so that they know where they are coming from. Of course, some of this history can actually be a fabrication. Not all of it, but a great part of the history can be a fabrication, which can, depending on what you want the people to know. Now, since this channel, this project, this podcast it's about leadership. I'm trying to see what is the responsibility of our leaders in presenting the image the people should have. I understand where during slavery or during colonialism, and even till date, a lot of European scholars are making huge effort to degrade Africa, to make sure that the authentic story, the gallant story, the pride story of Africans is not told, even to the Africans themselves, to talk less of be presented in Western media, where we are, of course. Now, the point is, like we already said, we don't need to, I don't need to tell the German president, the German media, hey, be presenting African story there. I don't need to be saying this to the French media, hey, be presenting African story to yourself by force, of course. But to the Africans, of course, I should have a kind of a leverage there. What kind of role do you think the African leaders have in presenting the authentic African story, both at the level of the media and also at the level of our educational system? What is their role there?
They have a very huge and central role to play, because the reason being that they are the ones responsible for structuring, for the structure, for operating the system and the structure, and making legislation. So they are in the exact position to take a responsibility to make their history known. And of course, if a leader, any leader who want to promote their national integrity, you first of all have to promote their history and their legacy and to the people, and first to the national, to the citizens, and then to the outside world. So they definitely have a huge role to play in making the history being taught in the school system. For example, in 2007, there was the Minister of Education from Nigeria school. You can imagine that. And Wolo Soyinka, according to him, he said he felt like to strangle the minister who did such. And for nearly 12 years, there was no history, African history or Nigerian history really taught in the school system. You can check it, because I was going through the Nigerian school curriculum, what they teach in the history, and also the West African history syllabus, to see the content and what they teach. So that was where I got to realize that within a period of 12 years, they actually removed the Nigerian history from the Nigerian school. I don't really know much about other countries, but in Nigeria in particular, there was no history taught that very much as a core subject in Nigerian school system until the Buhari regime and the Minister of Education made huge effort to bring it back to the school system. So the government definitely, the leaders definitely have the central role, given their position in the society, because they are responsible for making legislation, for working for the national integrity and the image, the national building. And history, of course, is one of the fundamental elements that can help a nation to build the pride of a nation. So that is where the responsibility of the leaders come in. And also, give sensitize the media to project the history of the Africa, the history and the rich heritage of the Africa in general, not just the history that took place within the Nigeria country, as it were, but throughout the Africa and throughout the world, because the African history you can find it outside of Africa. Given the fact that they are the early from Africa, so Africa has one of the richest history and the longest history, because they are the first in the world. They are the They are the parents of humanity. So because of that, they have a very a long history, longer than any other race of people.
Thank you for that. That is a good take. Okay, apart from the Nigerian leader, the African leaders, of course, the case of Nigeria as a relation, as it relates to your explanation, there is also the responsibility of the influential individual in the country. For example, you made mention of Wole Soyinka, who was angry when the minister made that erroneous and grievous mistake. It's really sad. It's sad.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So what I'm trying to drag to is, in Nigeria we have one of the biggest film industry in the world, which is Nollywood. And when you see Nollywood, okay, I'm not saying that they don't do anything about history, but look at the proportion of the film that is made in Nigeria. Of course, I know these have been dominated by the evangelicals, no, by the Christians, as it were. So, which means that the story usually about devil and God. So they are using Jesus Christ to, of course, paint the entire story where they are trying to kill the devil. And the devil, of course, in most of the cases, if you look around, if you look beneath the line, is going to be the African traditional system, the African way of life that are being told that it's a bad way. So we need to be conquered by Jesus, by God. So when you take a look at maybe other film industries like Bollywood, for example, in India, or maybe you look at Hollywood in the United States, these are instruments to propagate their cultural superiority over other people. If you consume American films, you will know American culture through there because they spend millions and millions of dollars to make the film because they have a message they want to communicate to the people, not just to entertain the people. They have a message of cultural superiority of the American people. The Indian, they do the same too. So a country like Nigeria with this enormous power, who have, of course, have been able to invent their instrument of storytelling as cinema. What role does the Nigerian filmmaker have in projecting Nigeria to the world, in the telling of the Nigerian story, the telling of African story?
Your question, you've already have just highlighted the very importance. And the previous answer, I actually was also saying that the government needs to encourage the media and make the media also share our stories. Yeah, the media has a lot of responsibility in this, like what you've just said. The media has a responsibility. Entertainment industry, the films industry, really big role to play in the cultivation and in the spread of our culture, to make people to inform the masses, to inform the world, and to inform the people about our culture, about our cultural values. Like you rightly said, when you watch the American movie, it's all about showcasing the American culture and the cultural superiority. And so that should be the same role that the Nigerian Nollywood should also play. And I believe that they should deliberately and with a conscious effort share and tell the rich story of Africa. For example, look at people who make movies on the Northern African Egypt rich history. They are not the indigenous African. They are not. They are foreign movies. They are not the Nigerian Nollywood movies. They are foreign movie stars that are making movies on on what they think on the pharaohs and the ancient Egyptian civilization were. So the indigenous African movie industries and all the media altogether has a fundamental role to play in sharing our culture, in telling the world about our rich culture. Like you said also about the religion. Uh, Yeah, Christianity has also really played some role in kind of devaluing the African rich history. Christianity has some role in it. But that is very sad. It is erroneous. It is erroneous. And this is where I like this British journalist Zenan Badawi. She's been making a documentary on to share the African history throughout Africa. The media and the films industry really have a huge and fundamental role to share the culture, and also including the religion, the Christianity and the Muslim. They have because most of the African culture were actually evolved into Christianity, into religion. Most of what we call religion today, like Christianity, they were it evolved from the African spirituality and philosophy and the Enlightenment of in the ancient time. I'm talking about the Christianity religion evolved primarily from the bedrock of African spiritual practices. So I don't know why any religion leader will want to use Christianity, therefore, as a tool to devalue the same source of the religion. So, yeah, Christianity and the religion and the media and the films industries have a fundamental role to share.
Of course, we are coming from Africa. We know the value of African history. If you have grown up in Africa and you manage to understand, if you maybe you manage to understand the importance of African history, there is no way you can ever devalue it. There is no way you can ever disregard it by any means. Okay, but at least not every African in the diaspora have the opportunity of growing up in Africa or knowing what really is the reality in Africa. So that is why it's very important that they continue to hear hear about the history and how to value the history of Africa. So now, when you say African history is rich, what do you mean by that? This one is the last question I'm going to ask you before we move to the solution. What do you actually mean? What are the evidence?
It is rich because of the values. The values, you see the values in religion, you see the values of the values of the African rich history, the value that it has provided the world, the values that even most that you've seen all over the world, that people don't really realize that those values that they espouse and hold on to actually were born in the Africa history, Africa cultural history. For example, one of those values is religion. I talk about religion. Christianity, for example, Christian religion, most of the world major religion were African, were practiced in African for a very long time. And they evolved into the modern religion. Talking about Christianity, we talk about the Judaism, we talk about the Hinduism. That is just on one aspect. Then we move to science and technology. It is clear the fact that civilization was born in Africa. Engineering and technologies and studies. So these are the values that the African history that we have derived from the African history. So this is why whenever I speak and said the richness of the African history. It is evident and it is what we hold on to today. And so we know the role that Christianity plays in the world civilization. And that evolved from the African spirituality. Even the Roman Catholic practices, they are all blend of the Christianity and some of the ancient African, what they call paganistic belief. and we are practicing it today. Everybody see the greatness of Roman Catholicism, the greatness of Christianity, Hinduism, and the greatness of Islamic religion. So all of these, African played a very fundamental role in the development of the world major religion. That is a value.
Thank you
And then
so
we
much.
come to the yeah, and we talk about the area of science and technology. Some of the European early scholars who have been said to have developed the basis for the Western civilization, they all got their education from Africa. They all study in Africa. Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, Pythagoras, all of these men who the Greeks were the earliest European to have civilized and educated. And yet all of them gained their education right in the center of Africa. And they brought that knowledge over to Europe to propagate it. So that is why I said the African history is rich and profound, and it has evolved into all the values that we have all throughout the world.
When you look at African history, you are looking at the fundament, you are looking at the basis of all the world religion, of all human history. Because if you take
Of all
out,
human history.
yeah, because you cannot take out Africa really from the world map in terms of human achievement. Whether you are talking of, like you
No.
correctly said, talking of biology, chemistry, physics, talking of science, talking of mathematics. But
Yes.
of course, history usually, like it's said, is written by the one who is the victorious, the one who wins. If you win the
Yes.
war, then you are the one that writes the history. But unfortunately, where I think that we Africa are getting it wrong in most of the cases, is that we expect others to tell a better side of our story. It will never happen. By telling a better side of our story, they will be disadvantageous by that. Because it means that they will no longer, it will become difficult for them to justify why they continue to exploit us. It is going to be difficult for them. Whether you are referring to the time of slavery, a lot of Europeans suddenly begin to come out with fake evidence
Yeah, and theories.
that Africans were animals. Well,
Yeah,
there is
theory.
nothing really evident about that. Is nothing they could demonstrate to that. Yet they presented it so that Africans were exhibited in zoos across Europe. All this one could happen because the church supported this, because the
Yeah.
intellectuals among the Europeans accepted this, and they fabricated a lot of things, a lot of stories to support this. Of course, we can blame them for that, but we really need to blame ourselves in some sense, in that we expect other people to tell our story. But that, I mean, we're not really like lacking the ability to write. We're not lacking the ability to talk. Now we have also developed the way to make movies, to make films. Come on, we can choose the way we want our story to be told. We can definitely choose that. It is our right to tell our story, and it is our responsibility also. All right, now let's move to two few questions I want to ask you related to the solutions, because that one is an important part. If you were to present Africa to the world today, assuming maybe you are in the position to draw out a plan of what story should be told in Africa, pick any country, I don't know, you might pick, I don't know, pick any country of your choice. What would you say is the primary things that need to be taught first? Maybe the primary 2 or 3 things that need to be taught about Africa or about any African country.
One is why we look the way we do. Why we look the way we do. Because do you know that still in the 21st century, people still treat, have some kind of stereotype attached to people with dark skin. Why? Because they don't understand the importance of being dark, of having the melanin, which is the second most powerful genetic material in the human body. The genetic material responsible for the synthesis and the production of the memory of the melanins in our skin is the second most important, powerful genetic material in our body. And to see people trying to have a stereotype against that, it is stupid. And that story has to be told, and that is a fact that has to be analyzed. Every single African, every single person, young person, need to understand why that is like that. Because one, that is what is the foundational element that make the African the parent of every other race of people with different shades of color. So that is what, and that story and that anthropological or cosmological fact is something that is shared throughout the Africa, particularly the Western Africa. So if you're talking about the achievement, history in terms of achievement, you will find that history throughout Africa, not just only in Egypt, also in Ethiopia, in West Africa, you'll find a lot of rich history throughout of our Africa. The science of metallurgy, the science of extracting metal and smelting irons, they were all invented in Africa. I have been listening and studying the works of Ivan van Sertima, who was one of the world leading historians on Black history. According to their discovering, they make huge discovery that what the Africans were doing thousands of years ago, other group of people couldn't do that until recent years. And they could only do it through the help of technological instruments. For example, the African were aware about the shape of the earth. And on the basis of that discovery, they drafted the first, they were able to tell the times and drafted the calendar that they were using, precise calendar of the year. So there are a lot of rich histories in science, in religion, and throughout of Africa. It's spread throughout Africa in mathematics that has to be told.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, for time's sake again, I'm going to ask you the very last one, which is going to be the concluding part of it. Now, what do you think an average African out there, whether in diaspora or maybe right in Africa, should do to sort of make sure that the African story is continuously told? Because there is a strong power in repetition. If we just say it one time, it's not going to have any effect. But when we continue to repeat it again and again and again, if you miss it the last time, you will miss it this time. If you miss it this time, because it's going to be repeated again tomorrow, you will not miss it. So how do we keep this momentum on for Africans that are at home or abroad, the individual, not the government?
It's to keep writing, keep telling story, like what we are doing now. At least few people are going to get to understand here this broadcast, what we are just discussing. And we keep discussing the history, we keep writing about it. Let those in the movie industries, the media keep sharing the story. It has to be sustained. It has to be something that is ongoing. It will never stop. We have to keep writing about it. There are a lot of materials available on this, but yet I decided to write a book on it and published a book on it because of the way I perceive that some people think about Africa, which I really didn't see when I was in Africa. When I crossed over and I began to experience and see how they look, the people of color and people from Africa, then I begin to, see the need to check the history and to know if it was true that they don't have any history at all. And then, having educated myself on the history, I decided to publish a book on it, and the book is available on the Amazon. So I think we have to keep talking, keep discussing, keep writing about it, have it taught in our school system, make it a core subject in our school system, taught throughout all the schools, all the various levels in schools.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. All right, viewers, with that, we have come to the end of today's podcast. I thank you for the time that you have spent listening to us. Like we said at the beginning of this podcast, this is just the beginning of it. We are going to take up this argument again and again and again, because also, like I've said before, repetition is what we need. We need to continuously talk about what we want to remain in the mind of the people. And in this sense, we want the story of Africa to be known by the African people and then also by the rest of the world. And for us to be able to succeed in it means that wherever you are, irrespective of what you do, you have the possibility, you have power in your hand. So use that power to make sure that the good side of African is known. People already know enough about what is negative in Africa, because there are millions and millions of dollars and euros that is spent every year to publicize what is wrong in Africa. But it is also our duty to show that we also have what is right. Because for the good, there is everywhere. And for the bad, there is everywhere. It just happened that people like to talk about what is bad about Africa. So it is your duty, your responsibility, especially if you are an African, to make sure that you continuously repeat what is good about you and about where you are coming from. Because really, there are a lot of things that are good about us and about our history. So thank you, and talk to you again soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo from African Dogs Leadership Project. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you soon.